The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, says a forensic audit ordered by the regulator revealed a total of about $2.4 billion as invalid foreign currency claims by organizations and individuals against the CBN. Speaking with Arise business anchor Bosin Omofaye in his first ever exclusive interview, the CBN chief says the balance of $2.3 billion valid claims of the $7 billion FX backlog will soon be cleared as part of confidence building for local and foreign investors. Cardoso also dispelled the rumors of plans to seize domiciliary accounts of Nigerians, as well as the February 27 monetary policy meeting, CBN interventions, the latest FX market reforms, and the moves to relocate some of the central bank staffers out of the bank's Abuja headquarters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Governor, for speaking to Arise News at this point in time. Now, my first point is about what the key message of the central bank is in terms of the current state of the Naira and how to further stabilize the foreign exchange market. What's the key message that the central bank is trying to push out to the people, to the market, to investors, and everyone else in between?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me today. I think it's important to say that we are in a situation, or we have been in a situation in the recent past where there's been a shortage of liquidity in the market, in the foreign exchange market, arising from certain distortions. And that in itself has created a situation where there's been huge volatility in the market. We have looked at this over the course of the past months and come up with certain policies which are focused on creating an environment where liquidity comes back to the market and where we can see a more vibrant market than we had before. It is ultimately, I see a situation where people who require foreign exchange don't have to know anybody in the banks, in either the central bank or the commercial bank. A system that is open and is transparent creates an environment for distortions to go away. And thereby, those who want to bring in foreign exchange and those who want to demand it can do so on an open basis, willing buyer, willing seller basis. And therefore, the market becomes more active and price is eventually discovered at a level that makes sense.
Interesting if that is part of what is called a free market and liberalizing the entire environment. But again, you have the domiciliary question about what the central bank or the government was planning or not planning to do. What's the true state of things as far as domiciliary accounts concerned in the commercial banks?
Yes. Now, from what I can see, there's been a recent publication, an article that went around stating that the federal government had intentions of using the domiciliary account balances and converting them to Naira. As the governor of the central bank, I can tell you that nothing could be further than the truth. And let me just illustrate this by saying the reforms that you have seen in the past months, which have obviously culminated in the Naira exchange becoming a little bit more, or becoming a little less volatile, and ultimately will be stable, has had to embrace market reforms we have spoken about earlier, and a situation where there's free entry and free exit. Attaching domiciliary accounts goes against the grain of that philosophy. Okay, we're talking of liberalizing a market and encouraging foreign portfolio investors, foreign direct investors to come in and invest. Doing something like attaching the domiciliary account balances goes against the grain of that philosophy. And we certainly wouldn't do anything like that. So I want to assure you that there's absolutely no truth, as at no point in time has that ever come up for discussion, because we are very clear that that does not fall into the overall strategy and focus that we have as a central bank.
Now that you spoke about the strategy, and I want you to walk me through a bit of a short, medium to long-term strategies in terms of the focus in how to improve FX inflows and stabilize the value of the local currency itself.
Ultimately, a number of things are very important. And I think our focus has been to start looking very, very aggressively at the supply side of the chain. Okay, and some of the things we've done, for example, we have looked at the issue of the net open position of banks and are of the view that a good number of the banks have no business holding the foreign exchange that they have held. They have absolutely no business doing that, and for the quantum and the period they've held it for. And that certainly does not encourage a vibrant market. And for that reason, we have asked them to sell their positions to customers with the hope that that will begin to enkindle supply into the market and be able to satisfy the demand of many businesses in the economy rather than holding on to it. Easily trading can take place in such a situation, in and out, rather than holding on to it, and of course making gains, of an astronomical amount as and when the foreign exchange rate goes in an upward direction. The other thing that we have also done is the international money transfer, IMTOs. Up to this point in time, we know that a lot of activity has been undertaken by IMTOs. We know that. Everybody knows this. And sadly, we find a situation where very little of that has come through the official channels. Very little of it. It's all been done in various forms that do not advance the cause of an open market. And so for that reason, in conversation with them, we came up with certain rules and regulations which we believe would be positive in the direction of encouraging them to now come into the formal market to undertake their activities rather than doing it outside of the official
window and yes, the funds not coming into Nigeria.
Exactly.
Manner of speaking, to support the economy.
Yes, very important. And to be fair, I think that the players in that sector understand that. Okay, and I am very positive that with the new framework that we have, we're going to see a very, very major mind shift in that. And don't forget that at this point in time, the difference between the official market and the BDCs is relatively minimal. So there's really not much incentive for anybody to not but want to go through the official channels, and of course, not having to take any unnecessary risk in going through channels that may be less accountable for than what you as an entity is supposed to do. So we brought out new regulations for the IMTOs that we believe very strongly will help to increase the
supply side.
And of course, with that will come the reduction in volatility. It's also important to say that in all this, we believe that the markets must be very transparent. The rates must be out there. Everybody should know the rules of the game. That way, people don't get caught unawares. You see, I think that is another very, very critical message that we are sending out to the market. And we, in our own, as regulators, frankly, we are significantly improving and taking up their surveillance activities to ensure that the markets work the way they are meant to work, and that all the players play by the rules. Okay, and that there's hardly any room for, or no room for any infractions, and it's compliance all the way. I think those may seem basic, but they are fundamental in our view to the proper functioning of any long-term foreign exchange market.
Interested when we stay with this, the FX, when it comes to the backlog of FX to clear, whether it's with the airlines or any other. What are your views on this? How are we working this up to ensure that there is a measure of confidence also in the market as far as the legacy issues are concerned?
When we came into the leadership of the central bank a few months ago, the issue of foreign exchange backlog, the forward backlog, was something that we met when we came. Obviously, it was something that had been accumulated over a period of time. And we met that when we came in. And of course, it is very important as a sovereign nation to be able to keep your integrity intact, and as a bank to be able to show that we consider obligations as obligations that must be met. Now, approximately $7 billion approximately was what we're told that the obligations were. And we looked at these and commenced the process of starting to pay meager resources as we had them. We were settling some which we believed were valid and due for payment. And obviously, this isn't something we could just do in one shot, or it had to take a bit of time. Now, as we went along, we now had reason to believe that we needed to take a harder look at these obligations. And so we contracted Deloitte Management Consultants to do a forensic of all these obligations and to actually tell us what was valid and what was not. And of course, we were committed to ensuring that we would pay all valid transactions. And the result that came out of this was startling in a great respect. It was quite startling. We discovered that of the roughly seven, about 2.4 had issues, which we believed had no business being there. And the infractions on that range from so many things. For example, not having valid import documents, and in some cases, even entities that did not exist. And in some cases, beneficiaries, account parties who had asked for foreign exchange and got more than they asked for. And some who didn't even ask for any and got. So there were a whole load of infractions there, which, as I said, amounted to about 2.4. Out
of the $7 billion US dollars, the headline figure.
Yes.
So how are you dealing with that?
Well, we're not paying. If you don't qualify, they are not a validly constituted request. We are not. And of the validly constituted ones, we have settled about $2.3 billion. And that applies to the airlines and a whole load of different entities spread throughout our economy. We've settled that already. Okay. And then now what remains is about 2.2. That's about what remains now to be settled. And I'm confident that we will shortly be addressing those and be able to move on and make progress. Now, obviously, because you asked a question with respect to how are we dealing with those that were not valid. Yes. You asked that question. We wrote to as they were identified, we wrote to the authorized dealers to come in and explain what the situation was and where the conclusions were differed. And sadly, quite frankly, I think much of those have not been disputed to satisfaction. No.
Interesting. So, dealing with the FX issue in terms of supply, and this how you begin to clear up the about $2.2 billion remaining. What will the calendar look like down the line? Is there an idea?
Yes.
Of what to expect?
Yes. I think, as I said, I think that will be something that will be done very shortly. Very shortly. Now, you can imagine that having 2.2 outstanding and 7 outstanding are not the same thing.
Not the same figure?
No, they are not the same figure. So I think we're at the end of this, to be honest, to put it to you that way. We will clear all that very shortly and, we'll move on, on to the next line of action. So I'm not concerned that the backlog will continue to be an overhang. I think we've come to the end of that road.
So you're dealing with the IMTOs, we're dealing with the airlines and a few others. And the next point is, again, about how does all of this come together in terms of what you are doing at the central bank as part of the overall objective of moving the economy forward, in stabilizing the economy, as it were, considering legacy issues and what we're dealing with at the moment. How does that fit together into what you expect to see from the fiscal authorities?
I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that the monetary side can't do it on its own. Both the monetary and the fiscal side must collaborate. I have absolutely no doubt about that. And both must understand what each other is doing and how they interrelate. And quite frankly, I think that given the relatively challenging times that Nigeria is in now from the financial economic standpoint, the different stakeholders within government understand that collaboration is key. And we have regular meetings, we exchange views and ideas and ensure that we're all heading in the right direction. And I think that you should expect to see that, in short, you should expect to see that we're walking the talk.
So you think productivity will help, and increased domestic productivity will help the central bank position?
Ultimately, it comes back to us. This is a problem I sometimes have when many blame the central bank for the foreign exchange situation. It's really a problem I have because we rely on what comes in. Okay, we don't produce foreign exchange. We don't. So we rely on what comes in. All we can try and do is use that to leverage for more to start coming in. And that also includes foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investors, which sometimes some people look at FPIs and say, oh, it's hot money and all this. I do not believe that is the case. I take it that in any portfolio that you have, okay, of foreign exchange, either it be a sovereign or even a corporate, you will have a diversified mix of portfolio investors, diversified. Today, I would say that we have a situation where a lot of foreign portfolio investors are very interested in coming back to the Nigerian market. It's incredible. And if there's any group that has taken an interest very methodically, may I say, they have not, run over the door to get into, but they've taken a very methodical interest in understanding the reforms that are taking place, in understanding it, and seeing how it is taking the country to a direction they believe is the right one. It is the foreign portfolio investors. They come, you think they may not come back, they come back a second time, they come back a third time, then they see some of the rating agencies coming out with their own conclusions of how they see the economy of the country progressing. It validates what they are thinking. We do additional reforms. It continues to encourage them. That's how I see investors playing today. Gone are the days where you can shut yourself out and say, no, we don't want this. The issue is to have it as part of a mix of different inflows. And speaking about that, I think the recent move to have NNPC, okay, and some of the other MDAs and the other MDAs move their funding, okay, straight to the central bank, also sends a very powerful signal to the confidence. It strengthens the confidence. It boosts the confidence that, so finally Nigeria is going in a direction that many investors want to see it go. So these are all very, very positive reforms that we may think as very little, but for those outside, they see it as giant steps forward. It may not be at the end game yet, but definitely in the right direction that will take us there. And that in itself, as you know, as the confidence comes back, because like you have rightly said, it's been a confidence booster. As the confidence comes back and their money starts coming in, which I see happening, volatility begins to reduce. The wide swings you've been seeing in the foreign exchange market begin to reduce, which is really what we want. And I believe very strongly as that volatility reduces and the foreign exchange market stabilizes, which it will, okay, and I've said before, and I'll say it again, that I do believe that the Naira is undervalued. I do believe it, okay? And it's undervalued for a number of reasons, not least of which is the distortionary impact of panic on the part of some people, not really understanding what's going on and how things get determined, and as a result of which irrational decisions are taken. My view, honestly, is that the time for panic is not now. And the time for panic and for cynicism is not now. That time is past. Okay. We are on the road now where the right policy decisions are being taken. It's that what I'm saying has been validated by the international community, people who've seen it in other places. The rating agencies, ratings have strengthened. It's not just because they have nothing else to do. It's because they look at what is going on, they analyze it, they've seen how other countries go and have gone, and they draw their conclusions on that, okay? And they are not sentimental about these things, okay? So people who follow that thinking will definitely see that Nigeria is on the mend.
One critical point that you've talked about since you resumed office was about the interventions, the various interventions that the central bank had been into over the past couple of years, whether it's in agriculture or in energy, whatever sectors. Are you abandoning those interventions, or is there a new playbook that you have for strategic interventions in Nigeria's key economies that businesses, investors, small and medium enterprises, ordinary Nigerians, farmers, really want to benefit from? what's the new playbook
Yes.
from the Cardoso's regime?
Yes. I have absolutely no illusion about the fact that interventions are necessary for our economy. I have no, especially in a time of crisis, and to be honest, even in the normal times, because things may not be working in the way you want them to, okay? And interventions help to channel resources accordingly and to come in and, bring certain sectors of the economy, when they are down, up to what you expect them to be. So I think that one is very clear on that. And one is clear in the knowledge that a big country like Nigeria and a huge population like Nigeria, we're talking of, when I say big, geographically and population-wise, we must reach out and ensure that everybody gets, touched in one form or the other. Very, very important. The farmers, in various parts of the country, the small and medium-scale enterprises in various parts of the country. We know that many of the extractive industries, those in entertainment, the whole gambit. Manufacturers.
Yes, those who are into exports as well.
Yes. And who face challenging circumstances such that there are times when an intervention is necessary to help them up, rather than just leave them to their devices from policies that may be quite brutal on them at times, you see. So intervention from that perspective is so important. It's not something that we can wish away. But I think that it is important that the framework is there to ensure that once you do it, it reaches the people it's meant to reach. There's no point in voting such a huge amount to an intervention when the farmer is not able to access it, or he accesses it in a way that isn't sufficient or doesn't help him to achieve his objectives, or the SMEs, they see it away from them, and yet you voted so much that really doesn't get to them in a way through distortionary impacts that doesn't help them accomplish their objectives. So those are things that we want to be able to sit down on as a central bank and use our convening power, okay, to bring people around the table, okay, and agree.
And those institutions, those
yes,
DFIs, for
indeed.
example.
It would not just be them alone, but other stakeholders as well, and agree a way forward. So that, you see, the problem is that if you as a central bank are trying to do the thinking, and at the same time you're also trying to implement, there's not enough time in the day, to be honest, and it's really not your core strength. So we will be working closely with those whose core strength it is, okay, to encourage them, and as I said, bring others to the table. Don't all have to be local, internationally as well, who have had experiences elsewhere and it has worked. Copy what they have done that has been able to transform their economies on intervention space, and bring them to sit to the table to share experiences such that those who are now going to do the implementation will understand that these are the things that are required to make it successful. We do not have the luxury of failed interventions any longer. We do not, okay, because we all see what inflation is. There's all the concerns around exchange rate. We cannot have a round of these interventions that do not have the impact they are meant to have. And the people who are further down the pyramid don't get the relief that we genuinely want them to get.
How are you preparing for the February 26, February 27 monetary policy meeting, your first monetary policy meeting?
Yes.
What's the preparation? What should the market and everyone expect to get at that? You're not going to be the only one in the room, by the way. So what should we expect? Okay.
Well, first and foremost, let me just say this, because I know a lot has been said around this. But firstly, I was a bit concerned when I became governor of the central bank, and engaging, with various stakeholders, both internally and externally, that a lot of work seemed to have been done around MPC. A lot of work, a lot of discussions seem to have been held around it, but I was concerned that transmission was questionable. Okay, I was concerned about that. And I didn't want a situation where we started back on that same trajectory. And it is for that reason that we took our time to ensure that as much as possible, we can put ourselves in a position where the MPC will be impactful and where it will complement the activities of the fiscal side and ensure that we are moving the economy in the right direction, that we are signaling the economy in the right direction. Yes, you're right. I won't be the only one in the room. And very shortly, before that time, you will know the new MPC members who, in my view, are all independent-minded people, which is very, very important for us, and people who will take decisions in the best interest of the country, and again, will not be emotional about the way those decisions are being taken. So I'm hopeful that with the renewed focus of the central bank as a central bank that is fully focused on stabilizing prices, controlling inflation. Because many people, and when we talk about this, it's been felt all the way down. Okay, so we have a great responsibility to ensure that the right decisions are made that will lower inflation and its impact. Having said that, and I think you can, because you asked a question as to what to expect, I think you can draw your conclusions from what I'm going to say here. And that is that if you look at the IMF forecasts, the latest IMF forecasts, they forecast a significant decrease in inflation for Nigeria, this time next year, or in between now and the end of the year. That is all as a result of the tightening that we are doing. It's as a result of that. And all I would say is that one is extremely sensitive to the fact that this is an issue that we as a country need to get hold of and ensure that prices do come down and they become stable such that living wage is living wage.
Transparency is very paramount in reforms, and I think this is what you're bringing into the FX market and to the entire spectrum of including the banking sector reform, which is part of your 5-year agenda, 2024-2028. So how do you communicate these various reforms through monetary policy actions and communications that are very clear and simple and straightforward to everyone in the room, down to the man on the streets, as to where the central bank is going and what the end game really is?
Communication, we know, is key with respect to monetary policy. And we obviously understand that the decisions that come from monetary policy can be a little bit complicated at times, but the idea is to ensure that moving forward, our communication strategy is able to give the right messages depending on the different segments that we are trying to address. So we are revamping the whole communication strategy for the central bank. And I'm hoping that as we move forward, particularly as the monetary policy committee engagements take place, you will begin to see the way and manner in which we try and get out the messaging. We are also obviously engaging various financial and economic actors okay, to ensure that they understand the mode of travel. We're constantly going to be going out, and we already do it in many respects, but we're going to strengthen the process of getting out and receiving feedback, okay, because the worst thing you want to do is to make communication a one-way traffic. We're going to be going out there to get feedback on the various efforts that we're implementing. And to be frank, nowadays, with social media and the way
other forms of digital communication.
Communication is taking place. It's a lot easier to do that. In addition to that, I must tell you that we're building capacity in that area. In fact, when I came into the central bank, I recognized that that was one of the major things we wanted to follow. In fact, if I mention 2 or 3 things, it was one of them, to ensure that the strategy is one that is effective.
Mr. Governor, let me ask you about this news around the plan to move some staff from central bank from the headquarters here to Lagos or some other parts of the country. What's the rationale behind this, and what's the end game?
Sure. Thank you very much for that question. I think there's been an attempt to sensationalize what is a normal process for any vibrant entity like a central bank. Bear in mind that as a national institution, the central bank has presence in every single state of the federation. Okay. And a situation where a large amount of the technical skills are in one particular location to the detriment of others does not bode well. So this has really been an attempt to realign that and to ensure that skills are moved from where there's an overabundance to where there's a great shortage of those skills. Okay, so that's basically what that is about. And with respect to Lagos, which you mentioned, from our perspective, it makes a lot of sense that the entities which we are attempting to regulate and need to be on top of that are based in Lagos should have the right skills from the central bank right next to them so they can adequately and effectively do their jobs.
Is the headquarters of the central bank overpopulated?
It is. It is overpopulated. And with what we're doing right now, we are hoping that that will also help in easing the issue of overpopulation, which it clearly is. And quite frankly, anybody that comes to the bank and interacts on that level will see that it is overpopulated. And we've got to ensure that we are able to manage potential issues that could fall out from an overpopulated environment.
Prevention, they say, is better than cure. So,
yes.
so that's well understood.
Yes.
Well, of course, you've got a very long way ahead of you, but we wish you all the best, and we appreciate the fact that you're speaking to us here on Arise News. Thank you very much, Mr. Governor. We wish you all the best.
Thank you
very much for this interview opportunity with Arise News. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.